Hi, and welcome to the Feel Good Everyday podcast. I'm Annie Vinya, integrative health practitioner, yoga, and meditation teacher. And I'm joined here today by my very dear friend, Byrd Graciano, otherwise some of you may know as Lee. And I'll let her introduce her, but to quickly say what we're going to do today is, a lot of people we see are doing all the things that are right here in quotations. I'm putting quotations around right. You're eating well, you're sleeping enough, you're, getting movement, you're trying to control your stress, but you just feel blah or off or not good. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But let me first, before we jump into that, let Byrd introduce herself.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Byrd and I live in Bend, Oregon. I am an integrative health practitioner as well. I'm a personal trainer, so strength and conditioning, with my focus being neuromuscular connection and pelvic floor work. And so I work a lot of connecting mind and body and then rehabbing like low back, pelvis, and core issues, and then integrating my health coaching in that. In addition, Annie and I are both homeschool mamas, so we have to add that to our list of what we do.
Yes, exactly, because that's still a thing.
Multiple hours a day.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I mean, I can go back to like what you touched upon. I was this person. I was a person that was doing all the things again, right? I'm going to put right in quotations. So if you can't see me, I'm just always going to put quotations around the word right today. Yeah, I was, what I thought was eating well, and I was doing lots of movement, and I've done all the movement. I've done the CrossFit, I've done the bar, I've done the yoga, I've done the Pilates, on and on and on, right? I thought I was getting enough sleep. I thought I was, taking a multivitamin and yet I still was, my hair was falling out. I was exhausted and fatigued all the time. I knew something was wrong. Being a homeschool mom, you can feel very isolated or lonely sometimes. So that didn't help at all on top of all this. And I think that's really when I started to go search for some answers. And I'll say that this was probably about 10 years ago. And I had always been fascinated with nutrition and movement and all the health and wellness routines, so much so that I'll go try anything. Like I will try a boxing class and loved it. And I will try the vegan diet and see what I think that does for me personally. Like I will try these things because I'm genuinely curious. But I also was desperate at that point to just feel better. So yeah,
Yeah.
for me 10 years ago, I went to like the naturopath and I, started to do a lot of online research and heard about meditation and, tried to do all these things and still didn't feel good.
No.
Right?
Right.
And I know that, there's so much pressure on us as a culture to do all the health and wellness routine, especially in Bend, Oregon, especially from California, where we're both from. I feel like that is a culture, and for a lot of the state in California or in Bend, Oregon, that's part of the what's the word I'm
The appeal, the draw,
yeah, exactly. I mean,
expectation.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, what I know you felt like this at some point in your life.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I have felt like this, I think, in waves, but like my biggest like eye-opening, like I'm doing things and I'm just crashing was probably, oh, I'm gonna say like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And even though I was in the health and wellness field, I was like not like I thought I was like dialed in. I thought my nutrition was great. My sleep was maybe not as perfect as it could be, but I was like, I am moving every day, probably more than most, and I'm lifting weights and I'm doing all the things. And I was still losing hair. Like I had a bald patch in my hair. I put on more weight than I had. I like couldn't seem to drop any weight. I was needing to nap multiple times a day, or at least at like 2 o'clock for like a half an hour to make it through my day. Tons of caffeine. And I was just like, this is not working for me. Like
Yeah.
whatever I think I'm doing is not resolving or fixing the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
And
that's deep dove into integrative health and different things. So I was like, even though I had done naturopath work and all the things, I was like, I need to figure this out.
yeah. So what did you try first?
What did I try first? I don't know that there was like one particular thing that I tried. I think the first thing I tried was like supplementation.
Mhm.
Like what can I give myself that maybe I'm depleted in?
Yeah.
I think I went more supplementation where I wish I had done, now looking back, more food based. But yeah, I think that was my deep like my deep dive into my first steps. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, mine was same because I went to a naturopath and that was kind of their protocol was to supplement everything. They did
Right,
all
right.
the lab tests, but then they just supplemented everything. So I
Yeah,
think at one point I might have been taking
I
like,
remember this.
yeah, like 40 different
Yeah.
pills.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not sustainable.
No, for
Like I'm
your
okay
wallet or your
swallowing
diaper.
pills, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, so that was definitely my first, and I thought, okay, there's got to be something else. And I think that's when I started trying, I tried keto, I tried vegan, I tried Whole 30, I tried like more protein. I wouldn't say like carnivore, but
Right.
because I don't think I could personally ever do that. But I tried more protein, like high protein, and tried all these things. And that's I think where it finally started to click is like, food.
Food. Huge.
Right? I think all of these routines can be big changes. But I feel like food has never been taught to us that that truly is medicine.
Right.
Again, things I wish they would teach in the school system. But anyway,
Right.
that food is medicine and how much of a change that that can dramatically have on your body and your systems, your mind, and therefore your spirit,
Right.
in so many ways by just changing those things. Kind of what started to make you feel like you had turned that corner.
Yeah, well, I was like crashing every day at like 2 and needing a nap. And then I was noticing when I'd wake up from my nap, I would need some chocolate. And then chocolate wasn't enough. And so I'd need something salty. And it was just this thing where I was like putting fast energy into my mouth to
Mhm.
try and sustain my levels of energy that I needed. And noticing that like it just kept crashing, and so
Mhm.
then I need more. And it wasn't until I really like was like, let's nourish my body as opposed to just trying to give it quick energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that was my beginning first step.
hmm Yeah. And I feel like we have to figure these things out for ourselves. Again, I wish the school system was different, but we have to figure these things out for ourselves because we're not taught like, they don't come right out and say movement, food, sleep,
Right.
right?
Right.
And of course, our culture nowadays is, you know, no sleep is a badge of honor, right? We're grinding, we're hustling if we don't,
Yes. Yes.
and right, and we're eating either most expensive food or the quickest food because that's all we have time for, not the homemade or again, quotation marks, right food. And it just becomes this cycle of more and more and more, which is really less and less and less for again our bodies, our minds, our spirits.
Right.
And I feel like it's such a, I think we all have to have that crashing point for at least a lot of us to go, okay, something's got to change.
Totally. It's interesting that you say that about like school and stuff because what I've noticed with my kids and different having kids that have some special needs and the way that providers and people work with them is they're constantly rewarding my or they were rewarding my kids with food. And like
Yes.
if you could just pay attention a little bit longer, here is a cookie. If you could finish this really great thing, here's your piece of chocolate. And it really opened my eyes to like we're instilling practices in our children where like if they've done something good, then you get something sweet.
Yes. Yes. And why is it sweet? I mean, I get why it's sweet, but I
Right.
also think, again, you're just
Reward.
instilling it.
But then when you're also like you finish this thing and then you get let's say a Dorito and then you finish the next thing, but you want them to maintain energy and you're just like giving them the things that are going to make them crash. It's so interesting that we're not taught as kids that food can be used to sustain energy as
Mhm.
opposed to the spike and the drop of
Yes.
energy.
Yes. Well, yeah, and I think like what you said, the reward, right? That like food is the reward or an alcoholic drink is the reward or like the cheats are the rewards. And while that's not a bad thing, I also think that that's when we start to rely on it more and more and more rather than it is just, it's medicine. Again, going back to that medicine, right? And sometimes a piece of cake is medicine.
But all to come back to the point of like, we're not taught on how to nourish ourselves.
Mhm.
And so we think we're doing well because we don't have the knowledge to know that there's another way or there's something different.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I think a lot of clients that you and I have seen are these people, right?
Yeah.
They are invested, they've had the crash out, they know they need to do something different. They've tried maybe a bunch of things or have thought they were doing all, again, quotation marks, the right things, and it's not working and they're stuck and they see all the stuff on Instagram and they're tired of scrolling and figuring out their information that way because that's overwhelming. Amazing that we have all this information out there, but it's also overwhelming. Maybe they're doing the AI, maybe they're talking to their friends, all the things, right? And I think that's truly where what I learned from my own stuff and then helping clients is that everybody's different, right? So like what works for me might not work for you and vice versa. So for me, I'm super anemic. And if I don't have a daily supplement of iron, my hair falls out and I am fatigued. And it doesn't matter if I'm on my cycle or not, I need to have it. And I realize that that's me personally, whereas the person might not be anemic, is maybe only needs it while they're on their cycle, or maybe doesn't need it at all.
Right.
And that can be a game changer in itself. So the food I'm eating that has iron in it, maybe it's a supplementation if I need it that much. Those kind of things where you can truly personalize it and you can do a lot of experimentation and kind of figure it out like I did, or finding someone that can give you and walk you through like here's what could work for you because this is personalized for you and your life based on
Yeah.
what you're telling us. Yeah.
I think where I see my clients flourish the most is when we can have these conversations about what does your day look like? What does your movement look like? How overwhelmed are you? How much can you add in? How much can you take out? And like
Right.
really like, is meal prep even an option for you? Do you
Right.
have the time or the energy? Because when you're so depleted and someone tells you to meal prep,
Yeah.
it's not happening. So then
No.
what resources can we use? How can we make that better? And so
Mhm.
taking just their story and really dialing it in for them and making small steps. What I find works best is instead of saying, here is a whole plan, saying, what can we tackle for these first 2 weeks? What
Right.
feels like a doable thing for 2 weeks? And then we check back in. You know what I mean? And so
Yep.
having more of the smaller steps I find works better.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Because when I was first doing this, I would give them the whole plan and they would walk away with eyes wide open. And I was like, okay, probably too much.
Yeah, it doesn't actually work that way.
Yeah.
Because if you think about when you were so depleted,
Oh,
like
yeah.
if someone was like, hey, I need you to go prep 3 meals a day, I would have been like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't
Yeah.
like by 2 o'clock, I'm toast.
Right. Well, and I think then that just sets you up for the failure circle. And once you get in that circle, if you're already depleted, it's just easier to stay there and
Yeah,
then feel like a failure because you're not doing the things that someone told you should do that will make you better, but you're too tired to do it and it's too overwhelming and you don't know how to start. And
totally.
and it's like, I'll just give up. And then you feel horrible about yourself because it's like, I should have done better. I should be trying. I should be doing all this. And like all that guilt, oh, that does not help anything.
Shame is not getting us anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Typically, I'm like, let's just tackle breakfast.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks, I just want you to like have a breakfast. Let's talk
Right.
about breakfast and then we can go from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
What
I love
other things do you notice when you're seeing clients who are super depleted, in addition to like maybe food, like not fueling themselves well, and they think they're doing all the things right? What are you seeing that maybe is one of the issues in them not feeling great?
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about sleep and you could talk about maybe lack of movement, right? When you're not moving at all, even if it's just a walk outside down your driveway. Although we're all doing that to go to and from a bathroom, but when you're able to get outside and be in the sun and do that, it's a much different than, sitting inside and doing something. But I think, going back, I think stress, right? We could be doing all these things right. And if our stress is still sky high all the time, and again, stress is good. We need stress. We're always going to have stress, but it's the chronic stress. If you're never allowing your nervous system to regulate or come down, then that eventually is going to take over all your systems.
Yeah.
No matter how much you're eating well or sleeping or all the things, it doesn't matter. And I think, that's kind of the second thing after food. That's usually the second thing, like, how stressed are you? And I think I mean, myself included, right? Stress is a part of our culture and it's again looked at as a badge of honor. And yet we always underestimate how stressed we actually are. Because when I ask my clients, like, okay, what's going on in your life right now? They'll say, and I'll say, how stressed are you? And they'll say, oh, I'm probably about a 5 out of 10 stress. And then they start naming all the things. And I'm like, that's a lot. Like, I would say 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 sometimes. I think that was true for almost all of my clients,
Hmm.
And you might not think it's as stressful, but from someone looking in, that's a lot. Like, give yourself the credit first that you're handling all of this. And
100%.
then let's figure out how to, like, because you can't get rid of the things that are causing the stress, kids, parents, dogs, whatever, right?
Right.
Work, so on, so on. But how can you figure out how to manage that after you handle the kids or after you have to go see the sick parents or after you have the stressful work call or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And I think that's another way to just help you, give yourself credit. I think someone telling you, like, wow, look at all the things you're doing is like, oh, I give myself permission that it's okay that I feel like this. I
Huh?
see why I feel like this.
Validation.
Yeah.
So
And
true.
from there, how do we get that to, come down every once in a while?
Everyone, we need to. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say for a lot of your
Um,
clients?
I was just having this conversation with a client this week. We were talking about the ability to receive. And so we had this conversation about, she was like, I just keep feeling like I'm giving and I give
Mhm.
and I give and I give and I give, but like I never return. So we
Yes.
talked about like the kind of the concept of like yin and yang. If you're giving all day long, what are how little are you replenishing yourself? And I said it would be so interesting if you just made a visual list of what you could see in all the ways you give and all the ways you replenish. And she's like, I can already tell you, like, I can only think of one way I replenish.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's like I replenish through a hard workout. And I said, well, like that might replenish your mind. Is it actually replenishing your body?
Right.
And so I think having like I love that concept of like for as much as you're giving, what are you also bringing in? And
Yeah.
making that visual list so you can see maybe how tilted and off the scale you are so that
Mhm.
you can start incorporating things to replenish yourself.
Yes. I love that visual because I think that's what we need instead of talking about these things because they can be so nuanced, right? But to have a visual like that, it's like, even for me, I could feel that in my body, like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, and then like if you truly list it out, I think especially as moms and women and we are by nature we give so much and then you see the discrepancies between those lists. I think it is eye-opening that you're like, oof,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
something
And
needs to change.
yeah, exactly. And I think we're finally, hopefully, maybe I'm seeing little smidges of time of like, we don't always have to give 100% and not feel guilty if we're not giving 100% all the time,
Yes.
right? That we can actually receive some things back, if not have it be equal, which we might not be there yet, but have it some sort of receiving instead of just giving, giving, giving. Because I think we've been shown that that's the way it's supposed to be. We just always give and not receive ever, right? And so, yeah, I feel like that's such a good way to say, okay, what about you?
Yeah. Yeah, like
Yeah,
what are you doing for you? And again, like we said last week, like it doesn't have to be mind-blowingly big,
right.
but it needs to be something in a way where you're like, I gave back to myself, or
Yeah.
I allowed someone to give back to me.
Yes. What do you do? I know you talked about the car. You sit in the car. I love that.
Well, for instance, this weekend I was feeling very tapped. Just my brain was very tired, and I kind of just told my family, like, I'm gonna spend the next 3 hours on the couch reading, and that's all I'm doing. And so please don't expect much more from me. And just kind of like checked out, which I very rarely do, but it did replenish me enough that I felt like after I had done that, I could like go tackle the things
Yes.
that needed to get done.
Yes. I love that. Oh, that's
But that's
awesome.
that's like a bigger step for me. Normally, it's more of just like I'm gonna, go sit outside and have my lunch,
Yes.
or I'm gonna, if it's nice out, or I'm gonna take a few minutes in my car, or I read every night before I go to bed because it's my time to like, even if it's only 10 minutes to let my brain have a minute.
Yes,
What do you
exactly.
do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you, the reader at night. I don't know if any of you guys have done Gene Keys, but I am deep into Gene Keys right now.
Oh,
I've been telling Bird, I've been telling everybody about this. And what I'm realizing about myself is I really do, it's part of my Gene Keys is I need that bolt hole, that escape, that like, and so every night before bed, I go to bed super, super early and I don't go to sleep, but I sit in my bed and I read and I journal and I read, all sorts of things like we've talked about fiction, nonfiction, self help, all the things. But I read because that's my time to just do that for me, and that's what I need at the end of the day, like you said, to go to sleep, to just kind of let the brain come down. And so yeah, I do that. I also I haven't been as good at that. I'm pausing because I'm like, I haven't been as good about this, but I do want to like leave the house and go get a coffee and sit at a coffee shop and do work, right? Because that for me is just being able to like get out by myself. Again, another thing I love, coffee. But so I'm still working. People can still call me or whatever, but I'm in a place that I love and I'm drinking something I really like. So
yeah.
again, it doesn't have to be like these big things. But as a mom who has three kids, who has homeschooled a lot of them for a lot of years and was kind of always feeling like stuck at home, it's these little things in this time of day where I still have kids at home. They're old enough to be by themselves because they're teenagers. But, I can kind of get out for an hour or so and not feel like I'm abandoning them or leaving them.
Right. Right.
Because I think for years, even going to the grocery store, I felt like I was like, abandoning or leaving them. I never was. There was always somebody there with them, but I was still
But I
like,
think that guilt is there,
yes, it's always there.
always
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. It's hard, and so
Yeah.
yeah, so that's awesome to be able to like come back and do that.
Yeah, I love that. I just, again, like we talk about, being healthy and doing these things. I have said for probably 2 months that I would like to reserve one time in the week where I take myself out to lunch or dinner, just me, no one else, because I
Mhm.
find that I really enjoy that.
I love
And
that.
I talk about it, but I don't actually do it.
Yeah.
And while I know that it would be good for me, it's hard to carve out that time for yourself. There's guilt there. There's, do I
Mhm.
really need that? But I know
Mhm.
if I did it, I would feel better.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's so hard to have that balance of like what feels okay to me without giving guilt, but also what I need,
Right. Right. And
Yeah,
so I think even though as health coaches and those things, we struggle with those concepts and ideas all the time.
all the time. All the time. Yeah. So you're not alone. Even the
No.
people that know they should do all these things still
Yeah,
struggle.
I
Yeah.
always say the people who are in healthcare, like the doctors, the nurses, the health coaches, we're going to tell you all the things, but really when it comes down to it, we're struggling with it ourselves too.
Yeah. 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 It's so true. And I think we're all so busy, it's having to find that time to do it, make the time, block the time, whatever you need to do to get that time to do those things. And then also the feelings around doing those things is where it's a struggle.
Yeah. I'm going
Yeah.
to ask you a question, Annie. Like we're talking like from the perspective of older kids, but there are maybe some young mamas who are listening to this. So when you were a young mom and you couldn't escape to the store with leaving your kids at home and those kind of things, how would you carve out some time for yourselves when literally, because your husband traveled so much, like how would you do that?
Yeah, and I was homeschooling, so
And you
we
were
were
home.
together 24/7. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know this. Yeah, honestly, for me, Daily Method, which is a bar workout, they're not round. They used to be a franchise, but it was bigger, but not so much anymore. But they had a child care room, and a lot of workout facilities don't. So, but that was huge, and it's actually why I therefore became a teacher too, because I could also bring my kids there, and they could go in the childcare room, and I knew that they were being watched and okay for an hour or whatever, while I taught or took or whatever. Like that was, or I'm crazy. I'm an early riser. I would get up at 5 a.m.
You are an early bird.
I am an early bird and go take the class before my kids were up and before my husband had to go to work.
Okay.
So it was one of those two things. I would either take them with me if I needed to, if the husband was gone, or if we just went later, or I would get up super early and go because we talked about this too. That has always been my one of my non-negotiables is I need to work out before I take all this on in the day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not a nice person to people.
I disagree. You're always a little bit nice.
Yeah, thank you. I try to be, but you know, I might be thinking different things especially if I don't work out.
As-
Yeah,
Which is allowed.
yeah. What did you do?
Honestly, getting because my boys were had difficult time in like group settings and situations, a lot of times what I did is I just made sure that I had a half an hour to an hour to myself each day. And so I instituted like electronic time at like 3 o'clock every day
Yeah.
so that I could put them on like a screen or a TV, and then I would maybe either work out or sometimes I would just like prep myself some great food. Sometimes I would just sit outside and read, but I
Mhm.
definitely used electronics to my advantage to like give myself a breather.
For sure.
Sometimes I would just, like they would be inside, but maybe I'd go outside and like we lived in a little cul-de-sac and maybe walk the cul-de-sac or just,
Mhm.
kind of whatever I could do to like carve out that like half an hour to an hour for
Yeah.
myself.
Good for you. Yeah, electronics that way is we had quiet time, you know, that was
Yeah.
our screen time.
Yeah. But I think as moms, if we're talking about young moms, we don't raise our kids in a village anymore. We don't
Right.
have like the village mentality where we have people help us most of the time. And so, how, as moms who homeschool or maybe don't, their husbands travel, or maybe they're working and they're momming at the same time, like in what ways can we carve out some time for ourselves and what tools do we need to bring in to help us do that?
Yeah, because you definitely need it as much as we're told we don't or don't think we should, or again, the guilt. You definitely need it. You
Yeah,
know, asking a friend to swap kids or something, or you know, swap
truly.
babysitters, whatever it takes sometimes, because it is necessary, especially if you don't have family around to help.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this is something we talk about the movement and the stress, but I think spiritually, which I usually tend to stay away from, but I've been realizing more and more that like I am not religious, but I am spiritual. And I think that that is becoming something more that I'm realizing I need. And while I don't, you know, prescribe to a lot of the religious ideas, I do think having that, you know, source or divine nature or whatever you call it, and knowing that it's there and helping you and guiding you, that I mean, sometimes you can just call it your gut intuition, right? Like that for
Yeah.
sure, I think is, you know, divine source, but also my gut telling me, whether it's your brain, your heart, your gut telling you something. That's a huge part. And I don't think I've given enough credit to it personally, but I'm learning to. I know you have a lot of great beliefs around
Yeah.
this. Your
I
thoughts?
feel like when my kids, but pre-kids and when my kids were slightly younger, I could tap into that more. But when I'm in the throes of motherhood and my working and my brain is tired, that's not where I go. You know what I mean? I just
Right.
don't have as much time to invest it. Now that my kids are older, I definitely am a little bit more like you, like, oh, I should really journal and tap back into more spirituality. But struggle is real. I'm not
That
gonna
was so
lie.
real. And I think, you know, I have learned along the way that even when you're in the throes of motherhood, it's stressful. One kid's screaming, you're late for something, you're trying to get another kid's shoes on, right? Or like whether you've got kids or animals or work or whatever, all the things are. Being able to just say, okay, I'm super stressed right now, but I know the universe has got my back.
Right.
And
It's
I'm,
huge.
I'm meant to arrive at that place that I'm late now for when I'm supposed to arrive. And I'm meant to, do this thing when it happens because, and I think that kind of just helps because that added stress now, then it's easy to like let it spill onto everything else in your life or that day or whatever. And it's so hard to reel back from that.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, you know what, it's just the universe telling me I need to go slower or I need
I need to
to
surrender this a
I
little
need to
bit.
skip that appointment for whatever reason. I need to
Yeah. It kind of takes that stress off of that it's like all you.
yes. Yeah, especially when you're alone and dealing with all the things.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But as soon as you learn that like you just got to roll with the punches, life just becomes a little bit more easy breezy.
All right. Well, thank you, Bird. We're going to wrap this up here. I thank you guys all for joining. I thank Bird for coming and sharing her amazing insight and visuals today. And let us know if you have any comments or questions down below. We're happy to talk to you and kind of, you know, brainstorm what's going on if that's necessary, if you feel like that's something you want or need. And I hope you guys all have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.